This video was made possible thanks to InVideo AI. More details coming up soon. All eyes in Latin America were on him, on Donald Trump. The hope of many was that this next administration would make a radical shift in its policy towards Venezuela to exert much more pressure. Pressure that would be able to put an end once and for all to the Chavista dictatorship.
Trump's triumph was celebrated by a large part of the Venezuelan diaspora, which has pinned on him the hope of seeing the fall of the ruling Chavismo.
However, let's not go too fast. Neither Maduro nor the Chavismo leaders are fools, although they may often appear to be. They know perfectly well what they have to do to woo Trump, and thereby avoid a new round of draining sanctions like the one the tycoon imposed during his previous presidency. And in this case, the offer could be very juicy. Oil in exchange for fewer immigrants.
More oil for fewer migrants, Trump is urged to make deal with Venezuela.
The Wall Street Journal has just released an exclusive. Trump is being heavily lobbied by the oil lobby to prevent his presidency from being too tough on Venezuela. Without going any further, Harry Sargent III, a billionaire GOP donor who frequently plays golf with Donald Trump at his Mar-a-Lago residence, is, along with his son, among those who want to prevent such a situation from occurring. They want to play the cards with Venezuela another way, negotiate with Maduro, instead of trying to overthrow him.
It is indisputable that the renewed flow of high-quality, low-cost Venezuelan asphalt to the US has been a benefit to the American taxpayer.
Now let's not fool ourselves. The millionaire buddies surrounding Donald Trump have their own interests, and in the case of Venezuela, it's no different. Harry Sargent III, owner of Global Oil Terminals, along with his son, Harry Sargent IV, are leading an intense campaign to persuade the new president. Perhaps because their company has launched $1 million business to import tens and tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of barrels of liquid asphalt. And of course, he's not the only one. Here on VisualPolitik, we've already told you how many US refineries, particularly those in the Gulf of Mexico, are enamored of Venezuelan oil, which is much better suited to their facilities. And then we have the future gas projects and the work that companies like Chevron are doing again in the country. VisualPolitik community, there's a lot of money involved. So there's starting to be a lot of pressure on Donald Trump to ignore Venezuela this time and look the other way. Nevertheless, there is one stumbling block. The appointment of Marco Rubio to the head of Department of State seems totally incompatible with the idea of doing business with socialist dictatorships in Latin America.
It's Rubio!
So the question, the big doubt at the moment is, could Trump succumb to the pressures of the closest members of his entourage? Will there be an iron fist against Venezuela, or will they opt for business instead? How exactly will the satrap Nicolas Maduro try to conquer the heart of the new president of the United States of America? Well, in this video, we're going to give you all the details. As someone who's been creating YouTube videos for years, I can tell you that a lot happens behind the scenes. Recently, we discovered a tool that has transformed how videos are made. InVideo AI, soon launching its newest version, InVideo AI V3. InVideo AI V3 isn't just any update. It comes with powerful generative capabilities, allowing you to express or communicate your ideas in the form of stunning videos, just like we do. The kind you've always wanted to create. The kind you'd be excited to share within your peers, in the most seamless, intuitive way possible, irrespective of whatever skill level you are at. Let me show you an example of what it can do. Simply ask InVideo, for example, to create a 30-second ad video for YouTube about a cola drink, but strawberry flavored, using wide cinematic shots and close-ups of the product from time to time.
Cola strawberry. A flavor explosion that'll make your taste buds dance. Every sip is a journey to strawberry fields.
But it doesn't stop there. InVideo AI V3's generative media can create anything you can think of, from dramatic storylines to product ads, educational content, and more. Unlike traditional video tools with steep learning curves that only solve for parts of your video creation process, InVideo removes all friction, letting users focus entirely on their vision and their idea. With features like voice cloning to narrate videos in your own voice, InVideo AI V3 truly stands out as the ultimate video creation tool. And here's the best part. You can try InVideo AI for free. But if you want to use their generative capabilities, we highly recommend that you go for the generative plan that starts at $96 a month. It's the one that I have, and it gives you the most bang for your buck with 15 generative minutes. This will save you hundreds of dollars that you would otherwise spend on editing, animating, and other production costs. If you're already an InVideo user, you can simply go to the add-on section and buy generative seconds. Now, back to the video. It's been strange, but following the results of the elections in the United States, Chavismo has shown itself to be, how shall I put it, particularly conciliatory and calm with Trumpism. And that's weird, don't you think? There's no more talk of fascists, no more Yankee imperialists, no more revolutionary slogans. Here, suddenly, only peace and love.
Hoy le deseo suerte en su gobierno y que sus propuestas y ofertas electorales tengan un buen destino, una buena realización, siempre dispuesto a relaciones positivas con Estados Unidos.
Que Trump vea a Maduro como un hombre fuerte y conoce perfectamente lo fracasada, corrupta e incapaz que es la oposición venezolana, por lo que un entendimiento más cordial podría estar sobre la mesa.
Caracas, Venezuela, really a dangerous place, but not anymore. Because in Venezuela, crime is down 72%. In fact, if they would ever win this election, I hate to even say that, we will have our next Republican convention in Venezuela because it will be safe.
Okay, it's true, they have called Marco Rubio a criminal, but with Trump, they've been like meek little lambs. And it's no coincidence. Chavismo believes that this time things could go much better with Trump. So much so that they even seem to have been somewhat relieved by the Democratic defeat. And the question is, why? Well, to begin with, this time, Trump has not been very clear about what his policy towards Venezuela will be. Basically, he hasn't said anything at all during the campaign. The only thing is that the president-elect does not rule out any option. From maintaining a position of maximum pressure to one that balances sanctions, focusing them more on specific individuals and not so much on businesses. And guess what? The first clue came during the election campaign itself. Trump was disappointed and very skeptical about the effect of economic sanctions. Sanctions that in some cases may even be counterproductive in their opinion. Check it out.
Trump White House was warned sanctions on Venezuela could fuel migration.
Keep an eye on this fact. Since 2021, US border authorities have intercepted more than 800,000 illegal immigrants from Venezuela, something that could be absolutely crucial. This is at least what Diosdado Cabello thinks. He is convinced that Trump's return is the best possible scenario for the Chavista regime, and does not seem to be the least bit worried about Marco Rubio's arrival at the Department of State.
Es lo mejor que le puede pasar a la revolución bolivariana, pues Trump comenzará a dormir con su enemigo y toda su promesa de campaña antiguerrerista se volverá inviable. Rubio le traerá problemas a Trump hasta con las hermanitas de la caridad. El primer votado del gobierno de Donald Trump, ¿quién será? Eso está facilito. Eso está facilito.
As I say, Nicolas Maduro and his inner circle seem to be very confident. And the question is, how is this possible? Well, pay close attention because this may give us many clues about what is to come. This may be the real ace up Chavismo's sleeve.
A deal is a deal.
The Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela has two major exports, oil and its own population. I think you all know by now that close to 8 million people have left the country due to the brutal economic and political debacle that Venezuela has experienced since Chavismo took power, and especially since 2014, when this country plunged into one of the biggest crises in its entire history. And I think you all know that Venezuelans, in spite of living worse every day, sleep on top of one of the largest energy reserves on the entire planet. The point is that these two things generate several problems for Donald Trump. Let's start, if you like, with the black gold. In 2023, Joe Biden's administration radically changed its policy. It granted extraordinary licenses to certain oil companies to operate in Venezuela. These licenses mean that the companies that receive them do not have to comply with many of the sanctions with which the Bolivarian regime has been punished for years. Well, of all these companies, Chevron takes the cake. We could almost say that it has become the real embassy of the United States in Venezuela, and the truth is that the Chavistas are delighted with it. On the one hand, thanks to Chevron and other companies such as Repsol, Venezuela is not only managing to increase its crude oil production again, a production that, as you can see, already reaches 1 million barrels per day, almost 40% more than in 2022. But now the regime, as well as having a greater source of dollars, is also gaining influential allies. You know how it goes, so that no one can think of intervening in the country or punishing the regime more harshly. So of course, the Maduro government is giving these companies free rein. In Chevron's case, until the year 2050, which is no small thing.
Venezuela extends until 2050, the period established for company operations with Chevron. According to a Chevron report, its activity in Venezuela, which is subject to certain limitations, had a positive impact on the company's 2023 results, but future results remain uncertain.
A short time ago here on VisualPolitik, we told you how the US might not have thought that overthrowing Maduro was such a good idea.
The point is that a very significant portion of Venezuelan oil is diverted to U.S. refineries that are specially prepared for the characteristics of the ultra-heavy crude oil extracted in this South American country. This allows them to operate with higher margins and profits, and that is just the beginning. The collaboration with Chevron, with Repsol, and with other international companies will cause Venezuelan production to continue to grow.
Let's see, it's not going to be an easy task because the wells have been neglected for many years, and it's going to take a lot of time and a lot of money to get them up and running, but things can continue to improve. The business is potentially huge. And that's why the Chavista regime has long since decided to abandon its old policy of accusations and oil blackmail to sell itself as a kind of potential strategic partner for Washington. Notice how the energy discourse towards Uncle Sam has changed.
Más nunca nos robarán. Bandidos de la ExxonMobil, son unos bandidos imperialistas, ladrones de cuello blanco. Si ustedes nos congelan, nos llegan de verdad a congelar y nos hacen daño, nosotros les vamos a hacer daño. ¿Saben cómo? No les vamos a mandar petróleo a los Estados Unidos.
Y quiero decirle a los inversionistas de los Estados Unidos de Norteamérica, a los inversionistas petroleros, que las puertas de Venezuela están abiertas para la inversión petrolera, gasífera, petroquímica del capital estadounidense.
In recent weeks, shipments of crude oil from Chevron's Venezuelan operations to the US have been close to 300,000 barrels per day. Keep this figure in mind because it already represents a very significant amount of dollars. You only have to multiply. The details of the contracts are not public, but it's not out of the question to think that the government is collecting more than $12 million per day, and the real figure is probably much higher. At the same time, almost 150,000 barrels are shipped from Caracas to India, and then the remainder of the production is flowing to Europe, particularly to Spain via Repsol. In other words, Venezuela is now essentially a Western supplier. It's a totally different situation from the one that existed during Donald Trump's first administration, when Venezuela began to triangulate its exports with Russia, China, or India, given the impossibility of making transactions in dollars. Now, as you can see, however, the revolution has returned to its old love affair with the little greenbacks. Business above all else.
Recordar que los denominados halcones de Trump, los mismos que ejecutaron la más perversa campaña de agresión contra Venezuela, son quienes están diciendo ahora que Trump buscará un acercamiento con el presidente Nicolás Maduro. Como dices tú, ¿quieren petróleo? No hay problema, que paguen.
VisualPolitik community, Chavismo now seems to have it clear. It's necessary to leave the old story of the revolution. You can almost imagine Maduro like this. Let's see, Donald, let's let bygones be bygones. In this new stage, I'll be on my best behavior. Your guys can produce the oil they want and take it cheaply. We'll give free rein to your companies, and we will defend the dominance of the dollar at all costs. Why should we get tangled up in sanctions that help no one? Look how well Chevron and your refineries are doing with these agreements. You have more jobs, more profit, and cheaper gasoline. VisualPolitik community, this basically explains why the oil lobby has been lobbying hard in both the Democratic and Republican parties in recent months to leave things where they are. To go against Caracas is to go against many US companies that are betting heavily on the oil in this country. The question is, will the new US president be interested in this agreement? Well, just in case, the Venezuelans have upped the ante. As I said before, Venezuela has one important export, a much more tragic one: its own people. An exodus that has had critical consequences for countries such as Brazil, Colombia, and Peru, but which has recently also been directed at the United States. The data speak for themselves.
Venezuelans are already the 6th largest illegal immigrant community in the United States, but that's not the most striking thing. What is most disturbing is that between 2023 and 2024, Venezuelans had almost as many encounters with the Border Patrol as Mexican immigrants. That is, the Venezuelan diaspora to the US is so massive that it behaves as if Venezuela were a bordering country.
In other words, Venezuela alone has become a major source of illegal immigration. And not only that, as we've already told you here on VisualPolitik, Trump has promised to deport more than 10 million illegal immigrants. This has become one of his top priorities. The problem is that such an operation could be tremendously complicated without the cooperation of the countries of origin of such immigration. Because, let's see, as we already told you, at the national level, Trump has several options for declaring a state of emergency, or to twist laws to give him the power to quickly capture and prosecute illegal immigrants. The problem then becomes how the hell to send them home en masse. Without the cooperation of the other governments, it may be practically impossible. And this is exactly where Nicolas Maduro has improved his offer. Check it out.
Yo lo sé, porque ellos me escriben. Y la gran misión Vuelta a la Patria que yo creé es para que ellos vengan. Están sobreexplotados en el exterior. Estados Unidos los tiene amenazados de deportarlos. O miento.
For several years, the Chavista regime has been developing a plan known as Return to the Homeland. With it, Maduro periodically enables repatriation flights that are operated by Conviasa, the Venezuelan national airline. Because evidently leaving Venezuela is not as simple as just picking up the suitcases and waving goodbye, many of the immigrants do not get jobs or suffer the problems that are associated with uncontrolled immigration. Problems like this.
Hundreds of Peruvians marched in rejection of Venezuelan migrants. Anti-immigrant march showed the most inhuman side of Chile. A radical group demonstrated against migrants in northern Chile and burned a few belongings of some Venezuelan citizens.
Well, the thing is that the Venezuelan authorities seem to be getting this plan to Trump's circle with a juicy proposal, giving the green light to transportation, collaborating with deportations, and even sharing the enormous logistical costs involved in transporting tens and tens of thousands of illegal Venezuelan immigrants back to their country. In this way, Trump would have a much easier time getting his plan through, and it would also be cheaper. Everything indicates that within his closest circle, they are telling him things like this. Donald, open your eyes. Venezuela abandoned the ruble, the yuan, and the rupee, and now does business using our beloved dollars. Venezuela sends us a lot of cheap oil, and it's going to help our companies make a lot more money. And besides, they're telling us to go ahead with the deportations. Maybe if we squeeze them a little more, they will even agree to pay all the costs themselves. It's a bargain. Why the hell would you want to get rid of Chavismo? Please, you even shared a lawyer with them.
A forgotten history, how Trump's current lawyer ended up representing the Maduro government in 2019.
And it's possible that for Trump, this could all end up sounding like a good deal.
The way I negotiate, it's done very well for me over the years, and it's doing even better for the country. I think, and I do think that, look, here's the story. I have people say, oh, just make a deal, make a deal.
We don't know whether or not the Venezuelan offer will make him happy, but we do know two things. First, that within his circle, he's being pressured along these lines. And second, the president-elect has always boasted of his great characteristic of being able to achieve good business deals. Business above all else. But of course, at this point, many of you may be thinking, but what about the struggle for democracy in Venezuela? What about the repression? What about the constant violations of human rights? Well, do you want the truth? Trump rarely has such priorities. Don't forget what glowing things he said about guys like Vladimir Putin and Kim Jong-un.
Yesterday, reporters asked me if I thought President Putin was smart. I said, of course he's smart, to which I was greeted with, oh, that's such a terrible thing to say. I'd like to tell the truth. Yes, he's smart. A lot of progress has been made. A lot of friendships have been made, and this has been in particular a great friendship, so. And then we fell in love, okay?
VisualPolitik community, Nicolas Maduro may have learned a valuable lesson after the first Trump administration. With this president, you shouldn't fight. You have to offer him respect, something that benefits him. Show a certain strength. Suck up to him a little and everything will go smoothly. At least that's what they seem to be thinking in Miraflores. And let's see, if he could get along with North Korea, which literally promises every year to destroy the US, why on earth would you think he won't be able to have a good relationship with Maduro? Check out what John Bolton, Trump's own former national security advisor, was saying not too long ago.
It is clear that Maduro is a strong man for Trump. In the end, we got Trump, to the chagrin of some, not to meet with Maduro. We did not let it happen. However, now it is possible that Trump will make a pact with him. That would be a major setback.
Of course, this doesn't mean that everything is already set, or that Trump is going to shake hands with Maduro. They want to convince him to do so, and Chavismo itself is looking to rope him in. Don't forget that Trump himself has placed Marco Rubio as his candidate for the Department of State. And Marco Rubio is not just anyone. He's a politician who has basically had two priorities: to end Castroism in Cuba and Chavismo in Venezuela. The die has not yet been cast. Of course, there's something we're overlooking. Perhaps Marco Rubio's goal is a very different one. Pay attention, because this could be nothing less than the squaring of the circle.
The legacy.
We all know that this is going to be Donald Trump's last term. He will not be able to run again. What he does during these years will determine how this president will go down in history. And Donald is a guy who likes big feats. And guess what? There's one goal that could be a huge score for Trumpism that would have almost no economic cost. Let's be clear, Venezuela is far away, but can you imagine Trump bathing in the glory of landing in Havana to attend the inauguration of the first democratic government of the island, or at least a non-Castro government? That would be a real turning point. Trump would present himself as the guy who ended a problem that has been dragging on since the JFK era, no less. And don't forget that Trump lives in Florida. Can you imagine what it would mean in his home state? In Little Havana, they would crown Trump as some kind of victorious emperor. And what about Latin America? What can I say? Many governments would breathe a sigh of relief. After all, the Cuban regime has been the source of many problems. But best of all, the regime seems to be on its last legs. Even Venezuela has begun to loosen its grip. For example, in 2023, Caracas sent between 60 and 70,000 barrels of oil per day to the island. But now the energy freight barely reaches 28,000 barrels, despite the fact that Venezuela, as we saw before, produces much more oil. In fact, this is what could explain news like this.
Cuba's dictatorship acknowledged its failure to solve the electricity crisis and pointed out that the situation is difficult. Dependence on Venezuelan crude oil and the lack of fuel have made the island's main power plants obsolete. There is a very large generation deficit, admitted the regime.
The situation in Cuba is so bad that it could be the perfect window of opportunity, especially if Venezuela ends up cutting off supplies, which of course could be part of the negotiation with Washington. The point is that with this strategy, Marco Rubio could give his approval to contact with Maduro. Trump would score himself a great legacy, and at the same time, favor the oil industry. And let's not forget, of course, the collaborative Caracas-subsidized deportations. VisualPolitik community, this is serious. There are many people in the Republican Party who are now arguing for precisely this position. A position that we can't be sure whether it will materialize into something or not, but it is on the table. The only thing that is clearer than water is that Nicolas Maduro and his henchmen are willing to hand over even their own mothers, if necessary, in order to keep themselves in power. And this is what they are now offering to Trump. Whether he accepts or not, the Republican magnate will take all these Chavista offers very seriously. Will there be a deal? Only time will tell. For now, it's your turn. Do you think Donald Trump will accept this agreement with Maduro? Will Cuba be his real target? What do you think about this possibility? Give us your opinions below in the comments, and let's start a debate. If you found this video interesting, don't forget to like and subscribe to VisualPolitik if you haven't already done so. All the best. See you next time.
And then we fell in love. Okay? No, really. He wrote me beautiful letters.